You were just my way in, Camila. Don't act like I ever promised you forever. I still hear those words when the world gets quiet. When the lights are off and I'm left alone with my thoughts. They hit me harder than any slap could have, sharper than any betrayal I ever imagined. I replay them over and over, not because I want to, but because I can't forget the moment my entire reality cracked open. My name is Camila, and I was the woman he used to change his life. And then discarded like I was nothing. We met on a humid spring evening in Houston, at a mutual friend's gallery opening. I was nursing a cheap glass of wine, pretending to be interested in abstract art, when Aiden stepped up beside me and said, "You look like you don't belong here either." I laughed. I shouldn't have. He had the kind of charm that wraps itself around your spine before you realize you're hooked. Tall, foreign, those soft accent-tinged words that made everything sound like a secret. He told me he'd just arrived in the US on a student visa. Studying architecture. Chasing dreams. I admired that. I'd always been drawn to ambition. Our connection was instant, or at least I thought so. He made me feel chosen, which, at that time in my life, meant everything. I had just turned 30. My last relationship ended with a voicemail and an unpaid rent bill. I was tired of being second place in everyone's story. So when Aiden looked at me like I was the entire narrative, I fell hard. Within weeks we were inseparable. He cooked for me, walked me to my car, remembered my coffee order, told me he'd never met anyone like me. And the way he looked at me, like I was light and warmth and air, made it too easy to believe that this was the real thing. 3 months in, he moved into my apartment. He said it was temporary, that his lease fell through and his campus housing was a mess. I said yes, of course. That's what you do for love, right? You make space. You build something. I never realized he wasn't building with me, he was simply building through me. The first signs came subtly. A phone call I wasn't supposed to hear. Messages he was quick to delete. He became restless at home, always rushing off to some mysterious networking event or class project. When I asked questions, he smiled and said, "You worry too much." And I did worry. But I also trusted him. Because love for people like me doesn't come easy. So when it knocks, you open the door and hope it stays. The night he proposed, he cried. Actual tears streamed down his cheeks as he told me I was his anchor. That with me, he finally felt like he belonged. He said he wanted to build a life, real roots. And I, like the fool I was, said yes. Thought I was his home. His heart. But I was just a passport stamp. We got married in a courthouse downtown. Just us, 2 witnesses, and a silence in my chest I couldn't name. I told myself it was nerves. That it was normal to feel overwhelmed. I even ignored how quickly he filed the paperwork. How much he cared about deadlines and process and forms. I chalked it up to him wanting to do things right. 2 months later, he stopped coming home on time. The man who once made me tea before bed now forgot to call altogether. I told myself he was stressed. Overworked. But my intuition, it screamed. And then I found the folder. Buried in the closet behind some sweaters was a binder of documents. Visa forms. Immigration notes. Copies of our photos, strategically labeled. Timelines of our relationship. And a checklist. A literal checklist. Read. Meet citizen check. Move-in check. Propose check. Marriage check. Submit documents. Secure permanent residency check. I stopped breathing. My name was on a list like a task to complete. The next night I waited. Not to talk. Not to cry. But to listen. He came home late, reeking of some perfume I didn't wear. I stayed silent. He walked past me like I didn't exist. And when I finally confronted him, when I shoved the binder in his chest and asked, "What is this?" he didn't lie. He didn't even flinch. "Don't be dramatic, Camila," he said. "You knew what this was." My throat burned. I thought this was love. He scoffed. It was survival. For me. That was when he said it. The line that carved itself into my soul. You were just my way in. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I simply walked to our bedroom, locked the door, and sank to the floor. I cried like someone had died because something had. The version of me that believed in fairy tales. She didn't survive that night. But something else was born in her place. Something stronger. And Aiden? He had no idea what was coming. The next morning I woke up in the same bed as him, but I didn't feel like the same woman. I was hollow but not broken. There's a difference. Broken means you still want to be fixed. Hollow means something inside you has gone quiet. Watching, waiting, rebuilding in silence. I didn't say anything to Aiden. I just acted like I didn't know. That was my first win. He was already planning his next move, oblivious to the fact that I had already started planning mine. In public I smiled. At home I cooked. When he reached for me I didn't pull away. I gave him exactly what he thought he still had: control. Meanwhile I started gathering everything. Documents, text messages, screenshots, voice memos. I needed proof. Not for court. Not for immigration. But for myself. Because one day I would tell this story, and I would not flinch. Took every ounce of strength I had to stay composed. But pain makes you patient. Heartbreak teaches you how to wait, how to weaponize silence. He thought I was clueless. That I'd crawl into bed every night still grateful to be next to him. He didn't notice how I stopped telling him about my day, how I avoided eye contact just enough to seem tired but not suspicious. He didn't realize he was sleeping beside a storm-gathering power. I watched him every day, how he started dressing sharper, carrying himself with that false confidence only men with fragile egos have. He talked louder on calls now, using words like green card and established as if they didn't leave a bad taste. He told a friend on speakerphone, thinking I wasn't listening, "In a year or two I'll have options." She was a means to an end, bro. Don't feel sorry for her. Don't feel sorry for me? I had never needed pity. What I needed was clarity, and now I had it in abundance. 2 weeks later he came home with champagne. Said we should celebrate because his application for permanent residency had moved forward. He called it our win. He poured 2 glasses and handed one to me like we were still on the same team. I took the glass and raised it. "To survival," I said. He smiled, clueless. "To freedom," he replied. That night after he fell asleep I packed my essentials. My passport, laptop, birth certificate, and a small lockbox with all the evidence I'd collected. Then I went to the guest room and wrote a note. Not for him. For me. It said, "You are no one's stepping stone ever again." Then I left. I stayed with a friend across town. I didn't tell anyone where I was. I changed my number. Blocked him on everything. He didn't know it yet, but the game was over. The calls started the next morning. Dozens. I didn't answer. Then came the emails. "Camila, where are you? We need to talk. This isn't funny." Funny? I wasn't laughing. I was healing. Eventually the emails turned cruel. "You're overreacting. This isn't abuse. You agreed to this." I never agreed to be used. I agreed to love someone who pretended to love me back. Weeks passed. Then one day I received a letter from immigration. Aiden had filed his final set of documents. And stupidly, so stupidly, he had listed my new address from an old insurance form I forgot to update. That meant one thing: he'd lied. Lied on a federal form about our ongoing marriage. Claimed we were still living together, still a couple, still in love. That was fraud. And I had the proof. I booked a consultation with an attorney. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I refused to let someone erase me and walk away clean. I handed her everything. The timeline, the texts, the phone recordings. She looked at me and said, "You've been manipulated. But you're not helpless." Those words lit a fire in me. The next step wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was legal. Clean. We submitted a statement to immigration. Not to destroy him, but to tell the truth. My truth. Aiden didn't take it well. He showed up at my friend's place, screaming on the lawn, demanding to see me. He cried. Then he raged. Said I was ruining his life. That I was vindictive. That I was nothing without him. Nothing? He didn't know me at all. The police were called. A restraining order was filed. And Aiden? Well, his application was flagged and delayed pending investigation. I heard later that his student visa expired shortly after. That he was forced to return home. That he blamed me for everything. Let him. Because here's the thing about users. They never expect the people they climb on to rise higher without them. I got a better job. started therapy, reconnected with friends I had pushed away. I even joined a support group for women who had survived marriage fraud and emotional abuse. We weren't victims. We were survivors. Warriors in heels and hoodies. Me. I was finally free. Not just from Aiden, but from the version of myself who thought love meant sacrifice, that silence meant strength, that being chosen was the same as being cherished. Healing doesn't happen all at once. It happens slowly, on the floor of your friend's guest room, crying quietly into a pillow so you don't wake her 6-year-old. It happens in the silence between calls that don't come, in the hours where your body remembers the trauma your heart is trying to forget. But then healing becomes power. The first time I smiled after Aiden, it felt foreign. Like my face was trying on something new. The second time it felt familiar. By the third, I started recognizing myself again. I poured everything I had into rebuilding. Not just my life, but my identity. I returned to school to finish my master's degree. I'd put it on hold when Aiden said it wasn't the right time, and we should save for his future first. Funny how, his future never had room for mine. I picked up extra shifts, worked weekends, studied at night. There were times I thought I wouldn't make it, but every time I saw his name in my mind, it gave me fuel. Every time I remembered his voice saying, "You're lucky I chose you," I fought harder to prove that I was never the lucky one, he was. My confidence didn't come back all at once either. It came in waves. It grew when I submitted my final paper and got an A. It grew more when I was offered an internship at a major media agency in the city. And it exploded the day they asked me to stay on full-time as a junior brand strategist, because they said my ideas were bold, sharp, and fearless. Fearless. That used to be a word I reserved for other women. The ones who spoke up in meetings, who walked into rooms like they belonged there. Well, I was one of them. I also started sharing my story anonymously online, just to process it first. I never used names, never blamed or exposed. I just wrote about my experience. The deception. The isolation. The moment I walked away. And one day I woke up to thousands of comments. Women from all over the world saying, "This is my story too." Suddenly I wasn't just healing, I was helping others heal. And nothing, absolutely nothing, made me feel more powerful than that. Around this time, a documentary producer reached out. She was doing a piece on immigration abuse and marriage fraud and wanted to include stories of resilience. She asked if I'd speak, anonymously at first. But when she heard my voice, she said something I'll never forget. "You don't sound like a victim. You sound like someone who built a kingdom out of the ruins." That line stayed with me. So I said yes. I told my story, not for him to hear, but for every woman who's ever felt invisible in her own relationship. For every woman who was picked because she was useful, but left when she became powerful. And wouldn't you know it? The piece aired on a major platform. And guess who saw it? Aiden. I didn't know until I got an email. Subject line, "We need to talk." I almost deleted it. But curiosity won. Inside he wrote, "I saw the interview. I know it was you. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. I didn't realize what I did to you until I lost everything. You were the best thing that ever happened to me. I don't expect forgiveness. Just wanted you to know. No begging. No asking for another chance. Just a sad, pitiful attempt at closure." I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I hit delete. I didn't need an apology. I didn't need closure. I was the closure. He thought I was a stepping stone. But I became a mountain he couldn't climb again. A few months later, I received an award from a National Women's Empowerment Foundation for my advocacy work. My mom cried. My sister flew in for the ceremony. Me. I stood on that stage dressed in the color I wore the night I left Aiden, deep, bold red, and I thanked the version of myself who refused to stay broken. I ended my speech with these words. Sometimes the greatest revenge is not anger. It's success. It's peace. It's moving on so far they can't even see your shadow. And when I looked into the crowd, I saw women nodding, crying, smiling, because they understood, because they were me. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was becoming unstoppable. Sometimes I wonder what he expected. Did Aiden think I'd sit quietly in the ruins of the life he burned down? That I'd stay there, curled in shame, while he paraded around with his new life and clean immigration status. He underestimated the very thing that made me dangerous: my ability to rebuild from nothing. Months passed and my name started to carry weight in circles I never thought I'd belong to. I was invited to speak at panels, consulted for social campaigns, even featured in an article titled, "From Broken to Bold: How She Turned Her Betrayal into a Brand." That article went viral. It wasn't just my story anymore. It was every woman's story, the ones who were used and tossed aside. The ones whose kindness was mistaken for weakness. The ones who chose to rise when they had every reason to fall. The attention brought opportunities. Publishing deals. Podcast interviews. Collaboration requests from brands that once would have ignored me. The best part? I didn't need to fake it. I didn't need to be perfect. I just had to be real. And real was enough. One night, while reviewing a campaign proposal with my team, I received a message that made me laugh out loud. It was from Aiden's cousin, someone I hadn't heard from since the wedding. The message read, "You were right about him. He's struggling now. Divorced. Lost the job." Karma came full circle. I didn't reply. I didn't gloat. I just let it settle. I always believed karma would do what it needed to. And it had. Apparently, his marriage to the real love of his life, the woman he left me for once the visa came through, fell apart less than a year in. Rumor had it she was already seeing someone else before their second anniversary. She got what she wanted: money, status, and then she disappeared. Aiden didn't see that coming. The irony? He left the woman who loved him for a woman who only used him. And now he was alone. He tried to start over. Applied for new jobs. Sent in applications. But the industry had changed. His qualifications weren't enough. His reputation? Damaged. Word gets around. And when you build your life on lies, eventually, it crumbles. Meanwhile, I was offered a position as head of strategy at a rising media startup. One of our biggest accounts was a marketing overhaul for a struggling agency in the city. Guess who their former PR consultant was? Aiden. The universe has a sense of humor. During a video call with the client team, I saw his name pop up in an old shared folder. I didn't even flinch. Because I wasn't that girl anymore. He was the one holding on to memories now. I was living in new moments. Building new dreams. One afternoon, I received a handwritten letter in the mail. It was from Aiden. He didn't have my phone number anymore. Blocked on everything, but somehow he found my office address. The letter was 5 pages long. He talked about regret. About how he didn't see me clearly until I was gone. He said watching my rise was humbling and inspiring and painful. He admitted he married me for a visa at first, but that he had started to fall in love with me later, and didn't know how to fix the damage he'd done. He asked, "Would you ever consider giving me another chance? Even as friends?" I laughed. Not because I was cruel, but because the girl who once waited for his validation had outgrown him in every possible way. I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer with a label on the tab. Closure. I didn't need revenge in the form of confrontation. I had already won. That weekend I took a solo trip to the coast. I walked the beach at sunrise, journal in hand, and wrote a letter to my past self. The version of me who believed his empty promises. The girl who smiled through dinners while he talked over her. The woman who lay awake wondering why love hurt so much when it was supposed to heal. I told her, "You were never the problem. You were just too golden for someone made of dust." And then I tore the page out, folded it in half, and let the wind carry it away. When I returned, I finalized plans for my nonprofit launch, an organization to support immigrant women in toxic relationships, offering legal aid, housing support, and financial literacy programs. I named it Rising Daughters. Because every woman, no matter how broken, deserves a chance to rise again. I became a symbol, not of what was taken from me but of everything I reclaimed. And Aiden? He became a footnote. Once he married me for a visa. Now he watches me from a distance as I take stages, build legacy, and create ripples far beyond the quiet life he thought I'd settle for. He wanted papers. I became the headline. It's wild how healing changes your definition of closure. For a long time I thought closure meant confrontation. Getting the apology. hearing them say, "You were right." But eventually I learned something quieter, something more powerful. Closure is living a life that no longer includes the person who hurt you, and not missing them at all. I didn't need Aiden to understand my worth. I had already built a world where his opinion had no weight. Still, life has a way of placing mirrors in front of you at the most unexpected times. About 6 months after I launched Rising Daughters, I was honored with a humanitarian award at a black tie gala in New York. It was surreal, standing in a room filled with powerhouses being celebrated not for surviving, but for thriving. I remember walking up to the podium, the applause thunderous, the lights warm on my face, and for the first time I didn't feel small. I didn't feel like the girl whose heart was used as a stepping stone. I felt like a force. And then I saw him. Aiden. He was at the back of the ballroom, standing beside one of the sponsors. His company must have been one of the minor contributors. His hair was shorter. His suit looked borrowed. But I'd know those eyes anywhere. Regret wears a certain kind of shadow, and it was painted all over his face. He didn't clap. He didn't smile. He just stared. I didn't flinch. I smiled at the crowd and began my speech. I was once told I wasn't good enough to be loved honestly. That I was convenient, useful, but not worth fighting for. And for a while I believed it. Until I realized that the people who fail to see your light don't get to dim it. They just lose the privilege of standing in its glow. A soft murmur rippled through the audience. I knew he heard it. But I wasn't speaking to him. I was speaking to every woman who's ever been made to feel like an accessory in her own love story. I was speaking to my past self. I was speaking to the future me who would never again apologize for being whole. After the gala I didn't linger. I exited through the side where my car was waiting. But he followed me. "Claire," he called out, his voice sharp with something between desperation and disbelief. I turned slowly. He looked like someone trying to rewrite history with nothing but eye contact. "I didn't know you'd be here," he said. "That makes 2 of us." He exhaled like he'd been holding his breath since I took the stage. "I read about the nonprofit. About your book. About everything." I nodded. "I'm not hiding anymore. I never meant to hurt you like I did. Intent doesn't erase impact, Aiden." He stepped closer. "You've changed." "No," I said, holding his gaze. "I just stopped trying to be small enough for people who didn't know how to hold me." He flinched. "Are you happy?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. A black car pulled up beside me. The back door opened and out stepped Michael, my partner. A man who treated me like I was rare, not replaceable. Who had flown in to surprise me at the gala. He wrapped an arm around my waist and kissed my cheek. "You ready, babe?" I smiled up at him. "Yeah. Let's go." I turned back to Aiden. "You asked if I was happy? I am. Deeply. Vaguely. In ways I didn't know were possible when I was with you." He didn't say anything. There was nothing left to say. Michael opened the door for me. I slid into the car without another glance. As we pulled away, I saw Aiden shrink in the rearview mirror. Still standing there. Still stuck. That was the moment I knew I'd outgrown every version of the woman who once waited for him to choose her. I had chosen myself instead. And life had followed my lead. Michael and I later got engaged. The proposal wasn't flashy, it was meaningful. A quiet dinner. A handwritten letter. A promise not just to love me but to respect me every single day. He never made me question my worth. He never used me as a stepping stone. He saw me as an equal and treated me like one. We bought a home together near the ocean. I decorated the office with photos of women I had helped through the nonprofit. Each one a reminder that even broken hearts can be seeds, when you water them with courage. Sometimes the past knocks. Emails from Aiden. Messages through mutual friends. I never respond. Because his part of my story is over. Buried beneath the chapters one rewrote with my own hands. Let that be a lesson. The people who use you to climb their ladder will one day look up and see you standing at the top of a mountain they'll never reach. The last time I saw Aiden in person was that night outside the gala. But life has a way of echoing back your past, just loud enough to remind you of how far you've come. A few months after my engagement to Michael, I received an invitation to speak at a private tech conference in Seattle. My book had climbed bestseller lists, my nonprofit had expanded to 4 new cities, and my face was now being recognized in rooms I once felt invisible in. I wasn't just invited, I was headlining. I stepped onto that stage in a sleek navy pantsuit, no longer trying to be soft or invisible. I wasn't apologizing for being seen. I stood tall, introduced myself and told my story, not just the heartbreak but the comeback. The healing. The growth. The fire that came after the burn. What I didn't expect. That Aiden would be there. He wasn't speaking, of course. He was just attending. A quiet face in the audience. A man whose once flawless confidence now looked more like a disguise he couldn't keep wearing. I spotted him right before I finished my keynote. And I ended with this. Some people only come into your life to teach you what you never want again. Don't chase closure from them. Don't beg for clarity from someone who made a choice to hurt you. Heal. Rise. And let them choke on the silence of your success. The applause hit like thunder. And I didn't even look his way as I walked off that stage. Later I heard he was trying to start over. Moved to a smaller firm. Got caught in a visa renewal mess because, surprise, marriages of convenience don't offer the kind of support a real partnership does. His charm only took him so far. People in the industry knew the kind of man he really was. Me. I was far too busy living the life I used to beg him to build with me. Michael and I got married in the spring, surrounded by people who knew the darkest parts of me and still celebrated my light. My mom held my hands as I got ready, whispering, "You're not the girl who begged him to stay anymore. You're the woman who walked away." We exchanged vows under a sunset sky. Simple, elegant, honest. I didn't wear anything flashy. I didn't care about impressing anyone. I just wanted a life that felt real. And I finally had it. My nonprofit became a national organization. I mentored girls who were in the very same place I once was, confused, broken, silenced. I poured every piece of my story into that work. Every scar became a torch. Every heartbreak became a bridge. Sometimes I'd get anonymous hate online, people who found out about Aiden and called me names. Said I was foolish for not seeing it sooner. But I've learned not to carry shame that doesn't belong to me. He used me. But I rebuilt me. And I didn't just survive, I flourished. One morning, a journalist called to confirm details for a profile they were writing about me. The title? From Visa Bride to Visionary, How Claire Turned a Lie into a Legacy. I laughed when I read it. Not because it was inaccurate, but because it felt like a headline from another lifetime. I wasn't that girl anymore. That version of me died the moment I stopped asking for love and started demanding respect. And as I sat in my sunlit kitchen sipping tea, my son playing in the next room, yes, we'd had a baby boy a year after our wedding, I realized something. Sometimes, life doesn't give you what you ask for because it's preparing to give you so much more. I was never just a stepping stone. I was the whole foundation. No. The man who once married me to get ahead couldn't even reach the level I now stood on. He made his choice. And I made mine. To live loud. To love fully. To lead with purpose. And to never shrink myself again. If you've ever been used, manipulated, or tossed aside like you didn't matter, hear me now. You do matter. You are not your heartbreak. You are the story that rises from it. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories just like this. New stories drop every day, and trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. And hey, don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss your moment of truth.